Greetings, space fans. The Rocket Hub team is here. Let's discuss SpaceX news and Starship progress, China's rapid space expansion, orbital startups, and NVIDIA stepping into space. Let's dive in. And if you haven't seen it yet, we highly recommend checking out our breakdown of the recent Artemis 2 mission. We put a lot of effort into covering all the important aspects of that mission. We're also planning to release a video about changes in NASA's programs very soon, so stay with us. But right now, news from private space companies. SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell graced the cover of the new issue of Time magazine. The publication effectively called her the second most important person at the company after Musk. Shotwell has been with SpaceX since 2002, and Forbes recently placed her 20th on its list of the world's most powerful women. In the interview, Shotwell made a fairly bold forecast for the lunar landing version of Starship. It will be ready by 2028, but with the caveat that a lot of things need to fall into place. Falcon 9 had its own moment in the spotlight as well. The first stage, B1067, broke its own record. In late March, this Falcon 9 first stage participated in deploying a batch of Starlink into orbit, after which it landed on the drone ship for the 34th time. This particular stage has been flying since 2021 and has managed to deliver astronauts, a large number of commercial satellites, and resupply spacecraft for the ISS to orbit. Only 36 days passed between its 33rd and 34th launches. Speaking of ISS resupply, on April 11th, a Falcon 9 lifted off from Cape Canaveral, carrying under its fairing a spacecraft from Northrop Grumman. It sent the Cygnus XL cargo ship to the ISS with a total cargo mass of 5 tons. In keeping with tradition, the spacecraft was named after a person of significance in spaceflight. It was named in honor of the late Stephen Nagel, a U.S. Air Force veteran who flew to space on the space shuttle a total of 4 times. For Starlink, the end of March and the beginning of April turned out to be about as contrasting as it gets. On one side, an accident. On the other, aggressive business expansion. Let's start with the bad news. On March 29th, at an altitude of about 560 kilometers, the spacecraft with the designation Starlink 34,343 suddenly lost contact with Earth. The following day, the LEO Labs radar network detected dozens of newly trackable fragments surrounding the vehicle. And here's an important detail. According to expert assessments, this was not a collision with space debris. The breakup occurred due to the rapid release of a large amount of energy in a short time. In simpler terms, something exploded on the spacecraft. This incident is drawing so much attention because it's already the second such event in recent months. On December 17, 2025, a Starlink satellite suffered the exact same fate. At the time, SpaceX attributed the anomaly to a propellant tank leak, which caused the satellite's orbit to drop sharply by 4 kilometers and generated a cloud of small debris. The company promised to release a software patch to protect against such failures, but the March incident showed the problems are still not resolved. That said, it's too early to panic and start shouting about Kessler syndrome. Both SpaceX and LEO Labs stated that the orbit is low enough for the debris to burn up in the atmosphere within a matter of weeks. There was no threat to the ISS, China's Tiangong station, or anyone else. Now for the good news. On the evening of March 30th, while radars were still searching for debris, a Falcon 9 rocket casually launched another 29 new satellites as part of the Starlink 1044 mission. Meanwhile, the conquest of the telecom market is continuing in parallel. In March, the operator Globe Telecom in the Philippines successfully conducted a live test of direct-to-cell technology, sending messages from a satellite directly to regular smartphones. The geographic footprint is also growing. Official access to the network was opened in the United Arab Emirates, and just recently, on April 8th, Reuters reported that the U.S. Federal Communications Commission is preparing to relax restrictions on the transmission power of spacecraft belonging to internet constellations. If the new rules are adopted, SpaceX will be able to legally increase bandwidth, dramatically boost speeds, and gradually even lower prices by expanding its constellation. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission updated radio frequency licenses for the 12th and 13th test flights. And here lies a critically important detail. While the profile of the 12th launch remains suborbital, the documents for the 13th flight officially describe the upper stage for the first time as orbital. This is a direct signal that SpaceX is planning a qualitative leap in the program very soon. We've already mentioned the Terafab project, Elon Musk's ambitious attempt to build his own full-cycle microchip manufacturing operation. But over the past 2 weeks, this story has gained concrete names and enormous numbers. The biggest headline, Intel has officially joined the project. Intel is playing the role of an experienced partner here, a player capable of providing substantial manufacturing capacity for chip production. According to Musk's plans, 2 high-tech fabrication plants will be built in Texas, in the Austin area. The first will be churning out components for Tesla's self-driving cars and the Optimus robots, while the second will focus on specialized chips for space data centers. As a reminder, in January, SpaceX filed an application for a constellation of, wait for it, up to 1 million satellites, and goals that grand require equally grand money to match. In early April, the market was flooded with reports that SpaceX has confidentially filed for an IPO. Bloomberg analysts value the company at over $2 trillion. SpaceX is expected to raise up to $75 billion through the offering, the largest stock market debut in history, which would would break the record of the Saudi company Aramco. And according to Reuters, SpaceX is already in talks with Saudi Arabia's public investment fund about a major stake of $5 billion. However, behind the facade of trillion-dollar valuations lie some sobering financial metrics. According to reports, SpaceX posted record revenue of more than $18.5 billion for 2025, but at the same time recorded a net loss of nearly $5 billion. Such significant losses are being attributed to extreme investments in cutting-edge research and development. At the start of April, Elon Musk once again reset his Elon timer. For the umpteenth time, he announced that the 12th Starship flight is 4 to 6 weeks away. As a reminder, a similar announcement was made in January, in February, in March, and now in April. Also worth reminding, the main intrigue of the mission is how the new third-generation system will perform on its very first flight. Ship 39 has officially completed cryogenic testing and is now actively awaiting a static fire. According to journalist observations, during the night of April 11th to 12th, a turbopump spin-up test was conducted, and it appears the upper stage has finally gotten its static fire. During the night of April 14th to 15th, SpaceX conducted the first full-duration static fire of the third-generation Starship. The test lasted about a minute and appeared to go smoothly visually, though confirmation from SpaceX had not yet come at the time of recording, so we're awaiting the company's statement, which we'll share in our Telegram channel. This is also the first test at the Massey facility since the S-36 explosion in June of last year, a full 10 months later. Observers at the launch site also spotted some interesting details. The windward side of the ship is now covered with heat shield tiles. Write your theories in the comments about why they did that. 2 new nodes were also spotted at the aft, currently appearing as blank ports. The assumption is that these are ports for future orbital propellant transfer, a key feature of the third-generation Starship. Booster 19 is also undergoing active testing. Recently, the water deluge system, which dampens the acoustic load from engine ignition, was already tested. The first stage now has all its engines installed, so all that remains there is to wait for a full static fire of all engines simultaneously. On the regulatory front, the FCC radio frequency license for the 12th flight has already been obtained. The regulator is reviewing the updated flight and stage return trajectories in order to issue the final launch license. If ground tests proceed without anomalies, we could see the first flight of the most powerful Starship variant in as little as a month. The scale of China's private space industry is growing exponentially. CAS Space CEO Yang Yiqiang announced that China plans to conduct around 140 orbital launches in 2026. For comparison, there were 92 last year. And even that was considered a record. That's growth of more than a third in a single year. On March 30th, from launch pad number 140 at the Jiuquan launch site, CAS Space successfully launched their new liquid-fueled rocket, Kinetica 2, also known as Lijian 2, on the very first attempt. The project was developed entirely from scratch starting in 2022, and in such a short time frame, the engineers produced a vehicle with impressive specifications: 53 meters tall, a liftoff mass of 615 tons, and a payload capacity of 12 tons to low Earth orbit, or up to 8 tons to sun-synchronous orbit. In terms of payload capacity, that's roughly 1.5 times more than Russia's Soyuz 2. The propellant combination: kerosene and liquid oxygen. The rocket's defining technical feature is a 3-core architecture for the first stage. It carries a total of 9 YF-102 engines, 3 per core. The second stage uses a single vacuum-optimized YF-102V engine. In rocketry, it's rare to jump directly to a multi-core configuration while skipping the development of a simple, single-core vehicle. This risky move demonstrated the exceptionally high engineering culture of Chinese engineers. All 3 cores fired in sync without any surprises on the very first flight. In the future, CAS Space plans to replace the engines with proprietary ones, and by 2027 aims to land all 3 boosters simultaneously as a single combined stage. The payload is no less significant. The rocket placed into orbit the satellites Shenzhengcheng 01 and, most importantly, Shenzhengcheng 02. This is a test prototype of a new cargo spacecraft being developed as a cheaper alternative to the state-operated Tianzhou cargo ships. In this way, the private sector is directly targeting the logistics infrastructure of the National Orbital Station Tiangong. Riding the wave of this success, CAS Space filed for an IPO to raise 4.18 billion yuan on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. The funds will go toward developing and testing new reusable systems and building the Kinetica 2 superfactory designed to produce 12 such rockets per year. The next Kinetica 2 launch is planned for later this same year. The rocket is to deploy 18 13 satellites for the Kenfan constellation. However, building heavy-lift vehicles is far from easy for everyone. Just 4 days later, on April 3rd, another private company, Space Pioneer, suffered a failure. This was the first orbital flight of their rocket, Tianlong-3, from the Jiuquan launch site. The vehicle is positioned as a direct analog to the American Falcon 9, a partially reusable liquid-fueled rocket capable of delivering over 20 tons to low Earth orbit and carrying up to 36 satellites at a time. During the flight, an anomaly occurred, and the rocket was lost. For Space Pioneer, this is already the second serious blow. In the summer of 2024, the first stage of the Tianlong-3 broke free from its test stand due to structural failure and crashed into the hills. The April failure showed that this project still has a long way to go before matching the reliability of Falcon 9. To complete the picture of China's commercial space sector, let's add one more story, a third one. On April 11th, from the waters of the South China Sea, the solid-fueled launch vehicle Jialong-3, also known as Smart Dragon 3, lifted off. The launch was conducted from the sea platform Dongfeng Hantianjian, and the rocket successfully placed into orbit a group of spacecraft, including Geely communications satellites. The operator of this rocket, China Rocket, is the commercial arm of the state corporation CASC. For the Jialong-3, this was already its 11th successful flight and its third launch in the current year alone. Over the past couple of years, India's private space sector has been associated primarily with the startups Skiroot and Agnikul. Both companies strive to stay on the cutting edge using advanced technologies including 3D printing for the manufacture of rocket components. But in late March, a new player entered the arena, the company Bharat Space Vehicle, or simply BSV. The company was founded by veterans of the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, including a former director of the agency and participants in national rocket programs. The flagship project is a 28-meter rocket called Agastya-1 running on kerosene and liquid oxygen. It is designed to deliver 500 kilograms of payload to sun-synchronous orbit and 800 kilograms to a low circular orbit at 400 kilometers altitude. Unlike the solid propellant traditional to Indian small rockets, the engineers bet on liquid-fueled engines. The main reason for this choice is the ability to test the second stage engine with a 40-second static fire on the test stand, and the first stage with a brief 4-second test right at the launch pad before liftoff. For small rockets, this provides a significant boost to reliability. The main selling point of Agastya-1 is launch readiness, within just 24 hours of an order being placed. This makes the rocket ideal for defense needs and emergency monitoring. Amazon LAO, formerly Project Kuiper, is trying somehow to catch up on its lag behind Elon Musk's companies. The factory in Kirkland is already producing up to 30 satellites per week, and in Florida, a 10,000 square meter preparation facility and a new integration tower were built for $200 million. There are currently 241 spacecraft in orbit, with another 200 ready to launch. And on April 4th, the LA-05 mission took place. An Atlas V rocket launched 29 Amazon LEO satellites at once, instead of the usual 27. The mission became the heaviest by payload mass in the entire history of Atlas V rockets. And there's more to come. Vulcan rockets are on the way, each capable of carrying 40 satellites, and New Glenn with a capacity of 48. Amazon plans to conduct more than 20 launches per year, not without controversy either. In early April, the conflict with SpaceX moved into the offices of the Federal Communications Commission. Musk complained that Amazon is occupying altitudes of 450 to 480 kilometers instead of the declared 400 kilometers. After a launch on the European Ariane 6, Starlink had to perform 30 avoidance maneuvers in 2 hours. Amazon fired back, accusing SpaceX of hypocrisy. Previously, Musk's company itself launched a competitor's satellites to the same 460 kilometers altitude and saw no problem with that. According to Amazon, SpaceX deliberately lowered its own satellites to a lower orbit in order to interfere with the deployment of the LEO network. Blue Origin is now in one of the most eventful periods in the company's history. 3 major projects simultaneously reached a decisive stage, from preparation of the lunar lander to construction of new infrastructure at the launch site. Let's start with the Moon. The Blue Moon Mk1 lunar lander, named Endurance, successfully completed a key milestone: thermal vacuum testing in NASA's Johnson Vacuum Chamber. The module is now returning to Florida for final pre-launch preparations. The mission is set to verify the performance of the BE-7 engine and precision landing systems. Blue Origin Origin officially states that this flight will serve as the foundation for a future crewed lunar landing under the Artemis program. The technical specs are impressive. The lander is capable of delivering up to 3 tons of cargo to any point on the lunar surface. In parallel, the company is preparing the third flight of its heavy-lift rocket New Glenn, the NG-3 mission. This will be a historic moment for Bezos. For the first time, a previously flown booster will head back to space, one with the ironic name, "Never Tell Me the Odds." A quote from Han Solo in Star Wars, by the way. This is the very booster that successfully landed on the drone ship back in November of last year. If all goes smoothly, Blue Origin will definitively prove that their reusability system works just as well as SpaceX's, or at least can replicate their success on a smaller scale. The payload will be the Bluebird 7 satellite for AST SpaceMobile's communications constellation. The stage's names are given personally by CEO Dave Limp, by the way. The third booster, currently being prepared for its first mission, has been given the name "No, It's Necessary," a quote from Cooper in Interstellar. It has to be said, the company has an interesting approach to naming first stages. The movie quotes clearly aren't running out anytime soon, so there's an enormous selection to choose from. Rocket Lab does something similar, except they rework idioms and common phrases. But let's get back to the blue beginnings. To ramp up the launch tempo, the company has begun large-scale construction at Cape Canaveral. According to FAA documents, Blue Origin is securing a second launch position. A 150-meter service tower is planned to be erected there. This will allow 2 heavy-lift rockets to be prepared for launch simultaneously. But the company's ambitions don't stop there. Blue Origin is launching the Oasis 1 project. This is a 2 small-sat mission with the goal of producing the most detailed map of lunar resources ever created. They will be searching for water ice, helium-3, and rare earth metals in the South Pole region. Though not without concerning news, at the company's Florida facility, a damaged roof was spotted on one of the hangars where pressure vessel testing is conducted. No official comment has been made yet, but rumors are circulating online about a possible anomaly during testing of one of the tanks for future rockets. Nevertheless, Blue Origin's overall pace right now looks maximally convincing. Jeff Bezos' company is clearly determined to become a fully fledged second player in the heavy lift class. China continues to actively test on-orbit servicing technologies. On March 16th, from the Jiuquan launch site aboard a Kuaizhou 11 rocket, the experimental satellite Yuxing 306 was launched. As a reminder, back in July of last year, the Chinese satellites Shijian 21 and Shijian 25, according to independent observers, conducted the first ever successful orbital refueling operation at an altitude of approximately 36,000 kilometers above Earth. And the new spacecraft could potentially pull off the same feat, following in the footsteps of the satellites launched by the Chinese State Corporation. The satellite was developed by the startup Sustained Space in collaboration with Tsinghua University. Its key feature is a flexible robotic manipulator arm. Yes, much like the one on the ISS or on Mars rovers. In orbit, it has already successfully completed a series of highly complex tests, simulated refueling operations in fully autonomous mode, under direct control from the ground, and using a visual guidance system. Looking ahead, such refueling vehicles are expected not only to extend the operational life of other satellites, but also to service orbital infrastructure or clean up space debris. The Alabama-based startup Aspect Aerospace received nearly $2.5 million in funding. The concept behind the project, called single-board satellite, is that the entire satellite is literally one printed circuit board. It can be mass-produced on standard electronics assembly lines. This architecture allows the cost of a single spacecraft to be reduced to tens of thousands of dollars, including launch costs. The operational scenario resembles the operations of an aircraft carrier. One primary host vehicle sits in a stable orbit and, when needed, releases downward into very low orbit, a constellation of up to 100 such board-sized probes. They will operate literally in the upper layers of the atmosphere, while the so-called mothership stays higher up and periodically deploys those small satellites downward. Due to intense atmospheric drag, the probes don't survive long at those altitudes, but that time is sufficient to collect unique data. The board satellites will be equipped with compact sensors for constructing ultra-precise space weather maps and measuring atmospheric density. The first deployment of such a network in orbit is planned for early 2027. And that is it for today. Stay with us and see you very soon.